1852, Calcutta, India. A 39-year-old mathematician named Radhanath Sikdar walks into the office of the Surveyor General of India. He has spent the last several months buried under mountains of raw data, crunching trigonometric calculations from field reports sent from the malarial plains hundreds of miles away. The numbers focus on an obscure, distant summit known on the charts only as Peak 15. Sikdar looks at his commanding officer and delivers a single sentence that will change geography forever. "Sir, I have discovered the highest mountain of the world." That mountain is what we now call Mount Everest. But here's the thing. The man who calculated its height didn't name it, and the man whose name is plastered across every map, every documentary, and every climbing permit never actually saw it. In fact, he spent years fighting a desperate, losing battle to stop his name from being attached to it in the first place. To understand how the most famous geological feature on Earth got the wrong name, you have to go back half a century earlier to a project so audacious it bordered on absolute madness. It is 1802. The British East India Company is devouring the subcontinent. But to control a territory, you have to measure it. You have to map it. So they launch the Great Trigonometrical Survey of India. Think of it as the Apollo program of the 19th century. The goal is to measure the entire Indian subcontinent with inch-perfect precision, using a series of massive triangles stretching from the southern tip of India all the way to the Himalayas. The surveyors drag a custom-built half-ton instrument called the Great Theodolite across the country. It takes 12 men just to carry it. They drag this monster through tiger-infested jungles, across scorching deserts, and into swamps thick with disease. Surveyors are dying of malaria. They are being wiped out by cholera. But the survey relentlessly marches north. In 1830, a man named George Everest takes over as superintendent of the survey. George Everest is a brutal taskmaster. He is a perfectionist. He fires anyone who doesn't meet his impossible standards. He pushes the survey northward with ruthless efficiency. But Everest has one unshakable principle, a golden rule that he enforces with an iron fist. Every single geographical feature they map must be recorded using its true, local, native name. He despises the arrogant colonial habit of renaming ancient rivers and mountains after British politicians. He spends his entire career fighting against it. If a mountain has a local name, you use it, period. In 1843, his health broken by decades in the Indian climate, George Everest retires and returns to England. He leaves the survey in the hands of his protégé, Andrew Scott Waugh. When Everest leaves, the greatest prize still remains unmapped, the Himalayas. But here's where it gets complicated. The problem with the Himalayas is politics. The British Empire is powerful, but they have hit a geopolitical wall. The Kingdom of Nepal is completely closed to foreigners. Tibet is strictly forbidden territory. The surveyors cannot simply walk up to the mountains and measure them. They are forced to take their sightings from the Terai, a dense malarial marshland in northern India, over 100 miles away from the peaks. Can you imagine that? Try to picture measuring the exact height of a skyscraper from the next city over, while standing in a swamp, looking through a brass telescope. And it gets worse. When you are measuring something that far away, the atmosphere plays tricks on you. Light bends. Temperature, air pressure, and humidity distort the visual elevation. The mountains appear to shift and change height depending on the time of day. The raw field data is an absolute mess of contradictory angles. To solve this, Waugh needs a genius. He needs someone who can unravel the chaos of atmospheric refraction. He turns to Radhanath Sikdar. Sikdar is an Indian mathematical prodigy. George Everest had hired him years earlier, straight out of Hindu college, marveling at his brilliant mind. Sikdar is a human computer capable of solving spherical trigonometry equations that leave British officers baffled. For years, in his office in Calcutta, Sikdar processes the sightings from the Terai. He invents entirely new mathematical formulas to account for the bending of light. And then comes 1852. Sikdar completes his calculations on peak 15th. He realizes that this unassuming peak, partially hidden behind other mountains in the distance, isn't just another summit. His final calculation? Exactly 29,000 feet. When Sikdar brings this number to war, the Surveyor General panics slightly. 29,000 feet is too perfect. It looks like a guess. It looks like they just rounded up. So, according to historical legend, War arbitrarily adds 2 feet to the official record. 29,002 feet. They have found the roof of the world. Now, they face a new problem. What do they call it? This is where the betrayal happens. War sits down to write to the Royal Geographical Society in London. He writes, "I was taught by my respected chief and predecessor, Colonel Sir George Everest, to assign to every geographical object its true local or native appellation. But then, War claims that because Nepal and Tibet are closed off, they simply cannot find a local name for Peak 15th. Why would he do that? It's a lie of omission, or at best, willful colonial ignorance. The locals obviously have names for the most massive object in their skyline, but War doesn't look very hard. Instead, he proposes that the mountain be named after his old boss. He proposes the name Mount Everest. When the news reaches George Everest in England, he is absolutely horrified. The man who spent his life defending local names is now being used to overwrite the greatest local name of them all. He writes letters of protest. He formally objects to the Royal Geographical Society. He argues that his name is completely unpronounceable to the natives of India. He begs them to reconsider. He wants absolutely no part of this arrogant renaming, and there's an incredible piece of historical irony here. George Everest pronounced his own surname as Everest, rhyming with cleave or sleeve. But the Royal Geographical Society doesn't care. They are sitting in plush armchairs in London, thousands of miles away from the dust and the malaria of the survey. Mount Everest sounds grand. It sounds imperial. It sounds like a conquest. In 1865, over George Everest's vehement objections, they make it official. The mountain is Mount Everest. And what happens next? Decades later, the borders slowly open. The world discovers what War claimed was impossible to find. The mountain already had names, ancient, beautiful names. The Tibetans called it Chomolungma, the Holy Mother of the universe. The Nepalese called it Sagarmatha, the peak of heaven. But it was too late. The maps were printed, the textbooks were written, the empire had spoken, and the empire does not issue corrections. And what about Radhanath Sikdar, the mathematical genius who actually discovered the mountain? In the years that follow, his name is quietly minimized in official British reports. The establishment simply cannot stomach the idea that a native Indian was responsible for the greatest geographical discovery of the century. When he dies in 1870, his monumental contribution is already fading into the obscure footnotes of imperial history. Today, hundreds of climbers stand on the roof of the world every year. They take selfies at the summit, they plant flags, and almost all of them say they have conquered Everest. It is one of the most staggering ironies in the history of exploration. The highest point on our planet is named after a man who never saw it. It is pronounced in a way he didn't pronounce it. It was given to him against his explicit, desperate wishes, and the mathematical prodigy who actually discovered it was erased from the very maps he helped create. But the mountain doesn't care what we call it. Chomolungma, Sagamatha, Peak Fifth Down. It was standing there long before the surveyors arrived with their theodolites, and it will be standing there long after our maps crumble into dust. Keep your minds open, and until we meet again,